considered one of the most controversial military leaders of all time, yet one of the most brilliant military leaders of all time, is Robert E. Lee. His accomplishments and achievements are beyond contestation. He distinguished and multifaceted career that spanned military leadership, education, and engineering. His role in commanding the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia during the American Civil War showed Lee's strategic brilliance and tactical prowess, which allowed him to achieve remarkable victories against the Union Army, despite being outnumbered, outgunned. Not only was he commander of Northern Virginian Army, he was also a superintendent of the military academy at West Point. He implemented many reforms that modernized the academy's curriculum and disciplinary system. Lee also, after the Civil War, became president of Washington College, where he added many reforms to create a wonderful college setting for the students. But in June of 1862, when he took command of the Army of Northern Virginia, he was able to display his strategic brilliance and tactical maneuvering, despite, like I said, being outnumbered and outgunned, at the battles of Second Bull Run, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, showcasing his ability to outmaneuver and defeat his adversaries. These successes earned him the respect and admiration of his troops and established him as one of the most prominent Confederate generals, nay, one of the most prominent generals of all time. He had also fought with distinction in the Mexican-American War, where he was strategic prowess was displayed in a few battles where he contributed to those victories. He was also a military engineer, and he implemented many engineering projects and improvements to the infrastructure of the United States, and also with coastal fort building and protection of rivers and harbors with forts. But with all these military accomplishments, by his men, he was best known for his character and leadership qualities. He was respected because he was known for his integrity, humility, and unwavering commitment to duty. Lee led by example and instilled discipline and loyalty in his troops. His soldiers held him in such high regard they called him Marse Robert out of affection and respect. His leadership qualities are studied and admired by historians, military leaders, and scholars to this day. His defensive tactics he developed in the Civil War were beyond innovative. They allowed him and his outnumbered, outgunned, out-technology Confederate Army to hold off much larger Union Army advances while inflicting heavy damage to said armies. He implemented trench warfare, entrenchments, making use of fortified positions, natural barriers to protect his troops. His tactical brilliance was evident in battles such as Fredericksburg and Cold Harbor, where his defensive strategies inflicted heavy casualties on Union forces while minimizing losses for his own troops. His innovative tactics showcase his ability to adapt to the evolving nature of warfare during the Civil War. Yet, as significant as Lee's historical legacy is, it is also controversial. In my opinion, he was a symbol of honor and valor, but to others, he was a representative of the institution of slavery, which I fiercely detest, because Lee's decision to join the Confederacy was for the love of his state, Virginia. He regrettably seceded from the Union with Virginia because Virginia seceded. His state was his home. His state was where his heart was first. So he followed his state. His role in the war in the Confederacy has sparked and will spark ongoing debates and discussions regarding his place in history. However, anyone that debates his legacy, tell me this. Why would you diminish his military accomplishments, leadership qualities, and contributions to education and engineering, which remain important aspects of his historical legacy? Case in point, I have a story for you naysayers. Here's a narrative. This was at the Battle of Gettysburg. An incident occurred here which largely changed the views of this man of Southern people. He had been a most bitter anti-South man, and when he fought the Confederates, he cursed them desperately, damning them to hell, many other things. He could see nothing good in a Southern man, Southern woman. And the last day of Gettysburg, this man was badly wounded. A ball had shattered his left leg, and he laid on the ground not far from Cemetery Ridge. And as Robert E. Lee ordered the retreat of his Confederate forces, he and his officers rode near this Union soldier. The Union soldier recognized him, and though faint from exposure and the loss of blood, he started ridiculing Robert E. Lee, cussing him, raising his hands, looking Lee dead in the face and shouting, "Hurrah for the Union, hurrah!" All of a sudden, General Lee heard the man, looked, stopped his horse, dismounted, and came toward him. The man confessed. At first, he thought that Robert E. Lee meant to kill him. But as Robert E. Lee approached this Union soldier, he looked down at him with such a sad expression on his face that all fear left the man, and the man wondered what Robert E. Lee was about. Robert E. Lee extended his hand to this man, grasping firmly, and looked the man right into his eyes and said, "My son, I hope you will be well soon. I hope you heal." As Robert E. Lee walked away, this man said in 1,000 years he'll never forget the expression on General Lee's face, that he was defeated, retiring from a field that had cost him and his cause almost their last hope. And yet this general stopped to say words like those to a wounded Union soldier who had taunted him and made fun of his soldiers. This man said as soon as General Lee and his entourage passed by, he cried himself to sleep there on that bloody ground, and said to his dying days he will never forget that expression on Robert E. Lee's face of sadness. Not sadness for himself, a sadness for this poor Union soldier that was wounded on the ground. Now, if that story doesn't resonate something in your mind of what type of man this man was, then what can I say? You know, there are other stories. One time an old vet down in his luck knocked on Robert E. Lee's door, asking if he could help an old war vet. Robert E. Lee gave him everything he had in his pocket, $5 or $10. The man thanked Lee many times and then went away. Lee turned around, facing his guest and sitting back down. The guest said it was good that he took care of his old men. Robert E. Lee just matter-of-factly replied, "No, that was a Union soldier." This was just a short narrative, a very short synopsis, if you will, of Robert E. Lee and a few of his accomplishments. This was going to be a 10-part greatest generals of all time, but I've stretched this one a little far, so I'm going to do these generals one at a time. And I thank you for listening, and I speak for me and the other members of the Cool-Kegs podcast, we thank you from the bottom of our heart each time you view and listen to our content. We're just normal people trying to get a message out, and in a tight-knit community trying to introduce people to each other, or maybe some friends can become friends of their enemies. Until next time, Big Duke 6 out.
Heading out south wherever we are now. I must have slipped and got turned around. But just up ahead in this sun